Hello everybody and welcome back to the God of War boss rankings. Today we finally arrived at the boss extravaganza that is God of War 2. This game has a whopping 15 bosses, which is nearly as many as we've ranked in the entire series so far. Before we get started, I have an announcement to make. I'm opening my Discord to everybody on YouTube and Twitch. We've had a portion of our Twitch community there for nearly 2 years and we're excited to welcome you all to a place where you can discuss and play games together. Follow the link in the description at discord.gg/thedemocracy to join us. With that out of the way, here are the bosses of God of War 2 ranked from worst to best. No. We're not doing this again. This isn't fucking Groundhog Day.
This is pitiful.
That it is, Bill Murray. The butt of today's list is a basic bitch Cerberus. I cannot overemphasize how insignificant this encounter is. I'm filling the air with meaningless words that still carry more weight than the value of this fight. I didn't even remember it existed. It took me over 15 minutes of scanning through hours of footage to find this doggo, only to realize I killed it in under a minute with laughable effort. Last time I said the Piraeus Lion was a retread of Cerberus enemies as a boss. Well, this is literally a Cerberus enemy as a boss. And if I talk about it for any longer, I'm gonna run out of footage of this epic battle. So let's wrap this piece of rubbish up in a nice box and ship it off to Garbage Island. As if the gods themselves heard my pleas and laughed in my face, the next boss on our list is another Cerberus. This one comes later in the game and does have a few more interesting attacks and did put up a reasonable fight, so it gets the nod over the previous pup for that. But that's it. Thankfully, we're moving on to bosses with more original design. Originality doesn't automatically make for excellence, however. The Dark Rider and Dark Griffin are similar to the Cerberus. While the combat takes place with Kratos flying on the back of Pegasus, it still boils down to a Griffin and Rider being a bigger version of the basic enemies you fight, they just take more hits. They do fire some magic shots at you similar to how a Cerberus might breathe fire over a small dog, but that's still not really breaking any ground. If we're being truly honest, these Pegasus flight segments are atrocious anyway. The spectacle itself is neat, and I get that that's what they were going for, but it boils down to moving around a screen minimally while mashing the square button and dodging extremely basic and telegraphed attacks. So even though I'd say I dislike this boss more for its setting than the actual confrontation itself, let's not let it slide that the effort put into its design isn't much more than any of the other standard flying foes. You want to talk about something breaking ground, or rather blowing you off of it, we've got Typhon. This is much less of a boss and more of a portion of a level. You'll go throughout a path with Typhon trying to knock you off with his wind breath. Apparently he's been stuck in this mountain for ages and hates the gods. Yeah, that's all fine and dandy, but can you imagine how much his breath must reek? When you get past his nasty ass breath, you get a bow, Wrath of the Titans, and get to beat his hand while being in no danger to release Pegasus and end the fight. The mere fact that something that is more of a level hazard than any kind of battle should tell you just how bad the previous 3 bosses are. Let's make a natural transition from an environmental threat in Typhon to Clotho, a boss that uses the level around it to form a puzzle. That's right, it's a puzzle boss. Trust me, I love a good puzzle boss. And no, for those of you who've seen the DeMod-a-Thon, I am 100% not at all bitter that I was oblivious as for what to do in the third phase of the fight for the greater part of 15 minutes. Look, streaming, reading chat, and playing the game is gonna make me miss things sometimes, but it was pretty egregious on my part. Don't let my terrible play distract you from the fact that this boss is hideous. And yes, I'm docking points for an absolutely disgusting visual design that made me want to vomit with the force of a volcanic eruption. I mean, it takes a while to beat and you have to look at it the whole time. Though if I were to start a career in matchmaking, I think Clotho and the covetous demon were made for each other. She has at least 30 tits, you obsessive blubber butt, what's not to love? In reality, it is a well-designed fight. The first floor has you solve an easy puzzle, the puzzle on the next floor is more complex but fun to complete, and the top floor isn't all that hard if you pay even the tiniest amount of attention, unlike myself. This is just the barometer for how good the rest of the bosses are from here on out, all well above average by standards we've been operating under to this point in the series. Okay, maybe that's a wee bit of an exaggeration. I say this because Icarus is half glorified button masher and half QuickTime event. While the actual combat in this mad descent is awful, it's a hilarious sight to behold. Icarus crawls out from under this bridge like some sort of troll and proceeds to babble insanely. Listening to his crazed dialogue offers more entertainment than any of the previous fights did in overall value, and careening to the depths of the underworld while savagely ripping the wings from his back is stupidly satisfying. It may be brief, but this showing is more than enough to make up for lackluster combat. A fight with far better combat lies in your battle with Perseus. To some extent, this is your average humanoid boss battle, but it does bring a few interesting mechanics to the table. In the first phase, Perseus will be invisible. The trick may be obvious from the get-go. I know it was for me, at least thanks to my experience with bosses like lovable NPCs that nobody would ever hurt. Keeping your eyes peeled for movement in the water, you can track Perseus and eventually knock out his ability to go invisible. At this point, it's more of a standard fight like I mentioned, but at least he employs some magic to blind you and fires at you from a distance to keep things interesting. He's truly the first boss on this list I'd call great, and we still have 8 more to come. The first of which is the Colossus of Rhodes. Props to you, big guy. I threw a ton of flack at the Scylla, Skyla. Look, I warned you all in the first video my pronunciation of Greek words was gonna be bad, and if you all want to keep teasing me, I'll start doing unironic, intentional bad pronunciation. Getting back to the Colossus of Rhodes, he managed to break the stiff air of doing the same big multi-phase boss battle in the intro, and he added something fresh to it. Each phase that you go through is engaging, the size is truly a marvel to look at, it's actually fairly challenging for the beginning of the game, which gets your blood pumping, and instead of being a useless punching bag like the rest, he forces Kratos to make himself vulnerable enough for Zeus to kill him, ultimately fulfilling his purpose. The only thing holding him down is the intersection of the fight. You have this thrilling battle against a giant going on, and suddenly you're in a boring platforming segment with trivial enemies. Even so, it's not enough to make this fight anything less than awesome. If you've ever wanted evidence that I'm worthy of the title Parry King, just look at my fight with the Last Spartan. I noticed early on that he would string the same set of attacks with precise timing after every blow I threw, making it very easy to chain hits and parries together, making the difficulty and actual design of this fight a little bit disappointing. But that's kind of the point. He isn't supposed to put up a great fight with you, because as you drop through the stained glass, you'll realize he's just a regular Spartan. More specifically, the Spartan you left to continue the fight in the nation's honor while Kratos resolved his conflict with the gods. Turns out that Zeus demolished Sparta, and this warrior is the only one who remains other than yourself. As he dies in your hands, it sinks in how truly hopeless standing against Zeus is. Until Kratos snaps out of it and uses his burning rage to continue onward to the Sisters of Fate. Fighting the Last Spartan may not be the best fight in the game, but the setting is gorgeous and the impact of the fight is pivotal for Kratos. You know, there are a ton of arrogant assholes making their way to the Sisters of Fate, so it's fitting that there's an arrogant asshole blocking your path to the steeds of time that'll bring you closer to him. Enter Theseus, another humanoid fight that, like Perseus, has a few tricks up his sleeve that make the fight a real treat. As you begin, it's exactly what you'd want, 2 warriors duking it out in mortal combat. As you go on, Theseus will employ stronger attacks, making the challenge grow as your resources deplete. Eventually, he realizes he can't best you in a fair duel and retreats to send Minotaur after you. You'll need to use the bow to strike him down bit by bit while taking down waves of enemies. Normally, this kind of thing wouldn't be appreciated by me, but thanks to the wide catalog of singular bosses in the game, it's actually refreshing to be outnumbered. The nature of God of War combat lends itself well to fighting multiple foes at once, so utilizing that in a portion of a boss battle was brilliantly done. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the absolutely barbaric kill on Theseus. The boss deaths usually have style, but this one is downright cruel, and I love every second of it, just like the fight. Ladies and gentlemen, we have redemption for the Gorgons. Not only that, but I would say this is an attempt at redemption for all the times I've complained about basic enemies being tacked on as bosses. Unlike the Medusas and Cerberus before her, Euroli is an expansion on an enemy in the game that is designed to be genuinely different from her underlings. The start of the fight is very similar to most Gorgon encounters, with a mix of melee, scooting around, and trying to turn you into stone, but even here Euroli mixes up her melee attacks pretty well. Eventually she'll move to pillars in the back where things get interesting. She'll hang up there and use magic and massive AoE waves of stone gaze to freeze you. After wailing enough, you'll pull the pillar down and you'll need to repeat it with the other. Then you duke it out a bit more and eventually rip off her head to end the Gorgon sister trio for good. Aside from its great design, I love that it takes place so soon after you get the Golden Fleece and offers a fight that will reward players skilled enough to deflect the gaze. All in all, it's an excellent fight that is a perfect example of how to make a bigger, badder version of a normal enemy be something special. Speaking of big and bad, after you fight the Last Spartan, you're left with a pretty sizable problem. Fortunately, the Spartan left you with something of use: his body. The Kraken is a masterful blend of puzzle and combat. You'll need to beat the tentacles up on each side to uncover a switch. Once you do, you get a pressure plate that you can place the Spartan's body onto to activate an air vent. With this, you can fly up to the Kraken's defenseless face and smack away. After a bit, the beast will try to swat you down, but end up getting its tentacles stuck. A little climbing and stabbing will rip the tentacle down, and once done on both sides, you enter phase 2. The Kraken eats the Spartan and forces you to fight it straight up. Damaging both sides will knock it back enough for you to pull the lever and Jesus! I don't know if I've ever been so shocked at a boss death in any game, let alone God of War. It's fucking ruthless and epitomizes everything God of War's brutality is all about. As for the boss itself, it's a wonderful example of how puzzle and combat can work together fluidly to create a compelling boss fight. In a fantastic turn of events, you end up duking it out with the barbarian that nearly bested you until you submitted your life to Ares. Naturally, he holds some resentment for losing a battle he should have won and is ready to prove this time around that he can beat even a fallen god. This sets the stakes high and the battle itself rises to meet the expectation. It's split into 4 sections. The first is an appetizer to help you understand the type of movement the boss has. The second phase brings out a bunch of undead warriors to duke it out with, and in a creative twist, this section isn't won by damaging him through the minions, but rather killing each and every one of them. Hilariously, this also includes the running gag with the captain of the ship in the first game, making a brief appearance before being sent promptly back to the underworld. The third phase is the most imposing, with Ulrich growing massive and using his size to get great advantage in beating you down. But if you can overcome it, you make it to phase 4, which is similar to the first, but with swirling souls around him. Each phase has its own unique wrinkle, and like the best fights in the series, you're given healing and magic orbs periodically so you can survive throughout them all with enough skill and resource management. It's a spectacular duel that is one of the game's finest. You may be surprised to see the King of the Gods coming in as the runner-up, but it's in no part due to him not being good enough to be number 1, just that the number 1 boss is so fantastic it had to edge him out. After changing your fate, you're able to confront Zeus high up in the heavens. He'll start as a gargantuan version of himself that is far more bark than bite. He summons a few sirens, and you'll need to give him a good hug so you can bring down Daddy Dearest's hand for a good wallop. The second half of the battle is where things get serious. It's just you and Zeus, with him utilizing his godly strength and lightning. This is the only fight in the entire game that I would say is truly challenging. Any one of his many attacks do substantial damage, and they don't give you a lot of time to react. Going in for damage is nearly always a risk because he could decide to toss lightning in your face before your attack animation can even end. Parrying the lightning back does reward you with a little bit of health, but it is not an easy feat. Throughout the battle, you'll trade use of the blade and Zeus will change up his attacks. I love that this fight requires you to master Zeus's moveset or die trying. With enough effort, you'll be able to overcome the god, pin him down using your blades of chaos, and run the sword through him like a lumberjack sawing wood. It's a satisfying conclusion to the game, but it is not the end of today's ranking. The honor of best boss in God of War 2 goes to Loxus and Atropos, the other two sisters of fate. Like our previous two fights, this boss has many layers, but the complexity of mechanics throughout is what makes it rise above the competition. The fight opens against Loxus alone and revolves around your ability to parry her magic attacks and dodge the abilities that you can't parry. It's God of War combat at its finest, with every dodge and parry window being minuscule while your opportunities to do damage are slim but fair. In the middle of the fight, Loxus will take to the air and you'll get to swing around the arena. This is part of what got the sisters here. There are elements of this fight that are just plain old fun. Swinging around like Spider-Man while dodging and looking for moments to damage her are prime examples. After enough effort, you're sent back through time to the moment where you fought Ares. You fight Atropos on the very sword you used to defeat Ares as she tries to destroy it, which would leave you helpless against the God of War in that time. The setting is terrific and the fight itself is enjoyable as well. It consists of you warding off normal enemies while parrying back magic attacks and going in for the kill when Atropos gets close. Once you damage her enough, you're sent back to Loxus, where you get to duel both of them at the same time. It makes the attacks coming your way more frequent and a heck of a lot harder to manage, but it still remains fair, fun, and thrilling. To win, you'll need to damage Loxus enough to use her helmet to freeze time and break the mirror that Atropos is coming out of. Do this 3 times and both sisters will be trapped out of existence. This boss gives you everything you could possibly want in God of War. Fun and fair mechanics, multiple phases with great design every step of the way, high stakes that matter in the scheme of the story, and showcases the exhilarating combat God of War is known for at its best. With the Sisters of Fate dead and Zeus retreating to call for reinforcements, the stage is set for our last boss ranking before the new release today. Even with God of War 2's impressive showing, God of War 3 has some of the best bosses in the series as well, and I can't wait to share my thoughts with you on that in the new game soon. But for today, tell me what you think about the God of War 2 bosses in the comments below. Don't forget to join our Discord where you can keep up with videos, streams, and chat and game with members of the community that we brought together over the years. Be sure to subscribe for more gaming content and leave a like on the video. It means a lot to me and lets me know you're enjoying what I'm putting out. And of course, thank you all for watching, much love to you, and I'll see you in the next video.